Welcome to the 38th meeting of Junto Club. On this episode, Shu teaches us the importance of understanding a decision before critiquing it, and what needs to be in place to make the most out of any team. For any questions, comments, or if you'd like to rant on something important to you, email juntoclubpodcast@gmail.com. This is Junto Club.
Junto Club.
All right, welcome to the, 38th meeting of the Junto Club, where we were inspired by the original Junto Club founded by Benjamin Franklin about 300 years ago to discuss science, technology, business, and anything that philosophy and anything that we found interesting to better ourselves. And so we usually start with a quote from Benjamin Franklin, but I think I'm running out of his quotes. So today we're going to start with another. I would consider him as a modern day Benjamin Franklin. His name is Charlie Munger, of course. But he's 97, so his day is numbered. So hopefully he can stay with us, but he could be not modern anytime soon. So anyway, so let's start with his quote today. So the quote is by Charlie Munger: "People calculate too much and think too little." End quote. What do I think?
All right, so you ever hear the difference between like data and like knowledge, right?
What's that?
Like data is like the raw numbers, and then you can go from data to information, which is like the numbers and context, and then information to knowledge, which is like an understanding of like why and what's going on. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to assume it's the same paradigm that he's talking about, which is, yeah, you can calculate and gather a lot of data, but that doesn't mean you understand what's going on, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is it the correlation is not causation type thing? Like basically,
I don't think so. I wouldn't say that's the same.
Yeah, you wouldn't say that's the same? Just
wouldn't.
like the idea that that's like you can see relationships and numbers that don't necessarily like make sense in context or matter in context.
Okay. Maybe it does apply.
That was just about cause of some science, right? But I mean, he's talking about more like data. Data, like to make a decision, data is not enough, right? You need to consolidate it, make it into some kind of knowledge, right? I don't know, like connecting dots between all the stuff, and then so you can make a better decision, right? Right. So,
Right.
I mean, otherwise you can just get, I don't know, information overload, stuff like that, right?
Okay, I can see that. Yeah. I mean, no, I was struggling with it a little bit, but I do. I mean, Matt's explanation did.
So yeah, I guess, Matt, what do you mean? But how does that relate to this quote?
Well, calculate too much. That sounds and think too little. I mean, I'm projecting, so this obviously, but calculate too much could be trying to basically gather and get too much data, calculate too much data, and not do enough thinking about how it connects and, how to transform that into like meaningful knowledge, right?
Okay.
Because if you don't understand something, you can just sort of, it's kind of like brute forcing it, right? Just keep testing things, collecting more data, just like looking at more samples, and you're not really discovering the underlying process or what's going on. You're just like, well, I don't know what's going on, so I'm just going to like brute force a bunch of data, a bunch of calculations, and see, what the result says.
Okay.
Which, depending on the domain, that might work, that might not.
What about you, Mike?
No, I mean, I think that Matt has a pretty good take on it. I mean, I'm just trying, like, I was thinking about sort of like, I mean, last episode, we talked a little bit about science, and, oftentimes there are studies done where it's like in the studies, like the outcome variable, like is forced essentially to be a number. just because that allows for statistical tests to take place and like some level of reproducibility and stuff like that. But sometimes like, I guess the processes that it's looking at like aren't necessarily like super well suited to like, be discretized or like have some type of number applied to them. But like, so
Okay.
I guess it's just, I've been like sometimes just sort of critical thing. Like, I feel like people talk about like studies. I'm trying to think like there's always, I don't have an example. So I hate that I started the sentence, but cause like, I feel like you always hear about studies of something.
Yeah.
And like, they'll say like, in the news, like, I don't know, like,
But red meat is bad, causing cancer.
well, yeah, exactly. Like, oh, like drinking too much beer like causes weight gain or something, and it's just like something so like on the nose that it's just like that. Like everyone who hears that, like the headline is like, well, of course, like why would you need to study that? But so I mean, I don't know, but I mean, I guess it's just like I guess there's some if you apply critical thinking to a lot of problems, you can get the answer faster than, as Matt says, just like test, like, testing it.
I think I'm going to go back on what I said slightly earlier, but the correlation causation, that's like a subset of this too, right? Because like if you say, you don't understand the underlying cause effect, but you can just calculate, with a bunch of data, maybe it is a even strong correlation. Then you just say, hey, I'm not going to think about it. Here's all this data that we did, and these lines that show the effect, right? And then get led to the wrong conclusion.
Okay.
Right. And I mean, I was just going to say, like, I guess people do too much computation. Like, but I mean, is he saying that people seek out too much data, or is he saying people are doing maybe even it's like computation with like insufficient data too? Like, I mean,
I'm not sure. I mean, it's open to interpretation, right? But for me, my interpretation is that what I think about is that he's saying that calculating is almost like try to balance different like calculating between different choices, right? You are data, crunching the numbers, try to get to make a better decision. But I feel like it's like also calculation sounds to me is very nice small part of something. You focus on you doing something, but you never really pause and think about a bigger picture. Sometimes if you maybe pause and think about the problem a bit more, and instead of like just go right and calculate right away, maybe you use like I feel like you became a tunnel vision, right? So if you pause and think a little bit instead of like just doing busy work, maybe you will have a better way of like doing stuff. I don't know, making better decisions and stuff like that. So that's my interpretation of that.
Yeah.
Like not focus on small thing and then not like thinking about a bigger picture. Maybe slow down and think about it. Yeah.
I mean, I think this is our main topic today, Shu, but something like team conflict. Yeah. Like if you, basically like, if two people are arguing, like, I guess, like if like you have very overt conflict and they're like screaming at each other, like, I guess basically, like, if you look at like the computation might be like, we basically don't want people yelling at each other, right? So it's like you do whatever, like you do the simplest thing to end the yelling, which, I mean, maybe to just be like, hey, stop, like parents with their kids, right? Their kids are butting heads and fighting and the parents just tear them off of each other and put them in opposite corners. Yeah. But that doesn't necessarily like solve the conflicts. That just like stops the fighting. So.
Actually, that's one thing about parenting, about conflict. Actually, like teamwork. Actually, conflict is it's a good thing, right? And then parents are stepping sometimes too early to let try to dissolve the conflict. Actually, they should just let the conflict, then kids fight it out. And actually, he actually is healthier for the kids because they come to a resolution maybe, and then they just and they became actually build a stronger bond too, like in kids, like siblings, also in teams too, right? So which is the main topic of today, which I forgot to mention, the five dysfunctions of the team. So we're gonna talk about it later.
Yeah. So. Yeah.
So actually, talking about this quote, one more thing I think it reminds me of like Einstein saying like when solving a problem, I think 99% of the time just thinking about the problem, and then 1% is just like actually doing the work to solve the problem. Like and something like that is like 99 or 90% of the time you should solving a problem, you should think about it, and then 10% of the time you should solve it, right? I don't know.
Well,
Have you heard?
Yeah, I haven't heard that, but my thought is I understand why an Einstein would say that, both because of what he studied and how smart he is. Though I don't think for most people it works quite that well.
Yeah.
But yeah.
No, because if you don't think about a problem, you actually gonna be solving a wrong problem. You're gonna waste time doing all the calculation and stuff, busy work. What if you spend most of your time thinking about a problem? Actually, the solution will come. You will come to the right solution when you execute it. It's the right solution, right?
As Shu told me way back when, there's nothing more practical than a good theory.
That's right. I got it from somewhere.
I know. I figured you did, but yeah.
Yeah. I think that is a control theory. A lot of people say a control theory is useless. I think that's one thing that came out like science and control theory. Oh, so last thing before I go on, you're talking about studies. I think have you guys noticed that? And it's for me personally. I feel like PhD research. I go through the PhD program and doing the research. I feel like it made me actually more skeptical of all the studies out there. Like whenever people say, "Oh, studies show something," I say, "Oh, really? Okay." I just don't believe it. I just my first thought is that okay, these probably because when you go through the process like doing science and research, you feel like, oh, this is so can be easily fake, right? You can very easily manipulate the data to show whatever you want to do. So I said, oh, then this is when I see people and I have published study research, okay. The first thing is that, okay, is that really true, right? So it made me more skeptical of not science methods, not scientific method or science as discipline, more like the studies that scientists have been doing. So yeah, so that's why I say I always I believe in science, I just don't believe in scientists.
No, that's a good. Yeah. That's a good saying, I think, and yeah, that's kind of why science is supposed to be focused on reproduction and the community just finding the same thing. So a one-off paper shouldn't be trusted, that much. It's, if one paper says something once, you should say, that's an interesting idea. It still has to be verified, right?
Okay.
Yeah, no, I basically agree. I even I would say the vast majority of scientists and researchers are probably giving the best effort. It's just also you're dealing with when scientists take on a problem, it's sort of they're taking on a very small piece, right? It's just here's a very small sample of data and assuming best effort. Yeah. The most of them are just totally making up data. It's here's the outcome variables we defined. Here's the what we're saying those outcome variables mean. And so in a small population, what they show may hold true, but it may just be sort of a artifact of a pretty small sample of people. And, you need a lot of people to take their shot at looking at the same problem in different ways and with different people. And if you get pretty consistent results, then that's a good sign that it's something to be trusted. If it's a one paper, it's pretty hard to trust. So
sounds good. So does PhD research make you less more skeptical of things, I guess?
Yeah, I've read a lot of bad papers, so yeah.
Okay. Not just me then.
I feel like this is a larger trend for everything though, right? When you don't know and you just see something from the outside, you're like, oh, this looks so complicated or hard or impressive or whatever. And then 95% of the time, if you go learn it, you're just like, oh, that's really simple actually, or it's not that interesting, or, whatever, whether it's the math subject or, programming or a paper, things always seem
Mysterious.
much more just
and-
involved and when you're on the outside. And
Yeah.
usually they're not.
Okay. Sounds good. Cool.
Anyway.
All right. Shall we
Does
go
this mean
to
we're
the
on to mini stories?
the mini topics?
All right, because I'm excited for this one. Time for my, this can be a new section of our podcast. Matt's shitting on blockchain technology section.
All right. Go ahead.
No. But this is an interesting story because I learned that there's a thing called Ethereum Classic.
Yes.
That was the original Ethereum blockchain, separate from the current, more popular Ethereum blockchain.
Mm-hmm.
So the story of how this came about is as a result of the first DAO, Decentralized Autonomous Organization.
Mm-hmm.
Like 5-something years ago, someone made the first DAO, and then people in Ethereum were super hyped about it because they're like, this is, amazing, right? The DAO is going to do all these things. So they put a ton of Ethereum was invested into it. Apparently 14% of all Ethereum was invested into this first DAO.
What was the DAO designed to do?
I don't know if it was designed to do. I don't know. I don't know what it was designed to do. I think it was something. Sorry, I think it was something along. I read this. It was something along financial investing without like a middleman. So I think the idea was like you'd invest your money and it would somehow do something, and then or your Ethereum or whatever, it would invest it, but there would be no middleman. Maybe just like use the DAO to be like a group consensus on how things are invested.
Yeah.
And then like, so it's like, it will like cut the, the middleman profits out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Something like that. So anyway, the long and short of it is, well, what are DAOs? They're NFT tokens or whatever. I don't even know what you call them. They're tokens that have code in them, right? It's on the Ethereum blockchain.
Smart contract.
Smart contracts. That's the term I'm looking for. And that means their code is public. So people looked at it and some guy was like, oh, look, there's like a flaw in this code. Long story short, they release the DAO, people invest. He uses the open source code to figure out a vulnerability and steals a third of their investment, almost 5% of all Ethereum.
Yep. From the DAO.
The DAO. Just a shit ton. Like imagine one guy stealing almost 5% of a currency. That's a lot. So
how much was the total money? Like 60 million? 100
it was
million?
millions even then, and now it'd be even more, right? Like with Ethereum gotten bigger.
Yeah.
So now here's the part that gets really interesting though, because you have this hard fork, you have a split, and basically the Ethereum, the people who made Ethereum, and the major players in terms of like miners and stuff who kind of run the main network and things, decided to do this hard fork where they reset the blockchain before the guy stole it. And kind of undid it.
Yeah.
And then there are some other people who were like, no, that's kind of against the spirit of what this is all supposed to be about. But what's really interesting is because as you've told us stuff about this, and I've read it on my own and see other stuff, people talk a lot about like, the blockchain technology is different because it's decentralized and there's no authority you can step in and do things. It's immutable is one thing they'll say, right? Like it's forever. Another is code is law. This basically showed all of that is not true, at least on how Ethereum implemented it, and is probably the second largest blockchain. In the end, when something major happened, the main people who run it, the central powers, just decided no and undid it. And it takes a lot more effort than with banks. And to some degree, some people think it's a good thing that they can step in, right? Because other people complain, it's good that banks have the ability to like overturn fraudulent transactions and things like that. And it is more difficult for them to overturn things for sure than the traditional banking system. But it kind of showed, this is something I was thinking anyway. I'm like, because before I heard this, I'm like, Ethereum like doesn't really seem decentralized in any meaningful sense, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like this kind of showed, it's not really decentralized. There's parts that are decentralized in the verification process, but
well, they had to overturn all transactions, right? Not just the theft of the 5%.
Right, because you can't undo a single transaction because of the way the blocks append and build off each other. So they reset to an earlier block.
Right. So that's like
which undid everything for, an entire, and I mean, that's another thing people bring up, right? Like, well, a traditional banking system, one person's fraudulent charge, they can give you your money back on your card or whatever, right? With the blockchain,
like people actually, if they exchange like a digital good for like, part of, and, whatever, like Ethereum, then they just, all right, oh, I got fucked. Like,
yeah, they essentially, people who wanted to stay on the main Ethereum network or continue. I mean, I guess I don't actually know too many of the technical details. Like, did people end up with wallets on both Ethereum and Ethereum Classic, right? Why would you give up your tokens on either one, right? You probably held on to both. But if you wanted to repurchase something on the new Ethereum chain, you had to redo it, right? Because they reset stuff for some amount. I don't know how long the reset was. Probably wasn't that long, but still, even if it's just a day or two, right? That's a lot of transactions. So anyway, interesting story.
So the Ethereum community is divided into two groups. One is the Ethereum, which is the new Ethereum, and then the Ethereum Classic, right?
That's right. So Ethereum did a hard fork and reset. Ethereum Classic continued the original blockchain with the stolen Ethereum, as a valid thing.
So what's the decision? Why did the founder of Ethereum, Vitalik Buterin, why did he, on the founding team, why did they decide to fork it? What's the reasoning behind it?
I mean, I didn't read anything beyond they wanted to, undo the fraud and get the money back.
Gotcha. Because it's controversial, right? It's very controversial because you're supposed to be decentralized, right? And if you do that, you are actually not decentralized anymore. So I know that's one of the controversy. It's a big controversy at that time. Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, it makes sense. A lot of change right now, blockchain, there's a different type of change. They are not decentralized. Even a lot of decentralized autonomous organization, they are not decentralized in the beginning either. But most of Ethereum is getting more decentralized in a way because the group is even the founder Vitalik Buterin, he doesn't really control Ethereum anymore. It's a lot of it's the community making decision, doing it, right? So slowly, I think in the beginning, for develop any kind of programming, right, you need someone to write a code, right? So someone had to be control it. But slowly over time, they're designed to give up control in a way, became more decentralized.
So
just one example on a Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin is there's no so far it's decentralized, right? It's pure decentralization. So that's why a lot of people love Bitcoin, because it's not you can't point to one person that actually controls it, right? Yeah.
So I would say, and there in some senses it might be becoming more decentralized, but in a lot of instances I think it's the opposite, and we're seeing moves to centralize more stuff, right? Because there's a growing number of middlemen, essentially, because operating on the blockchain is not just technically hard, but obviously to mint your own stuff, there's an ever-growing cost in terms of hardware that you would need to actually mint new blocks and secure transactions. So there's a growing number of middlemen, large companies like OpenSea and other stuff that handles the transactions and stuff, right? They manage your wallets and do the transactions and stuff. And some of them are even trying to do things like, doing a transaction on the blockchain is expensive, right? Because you have to pay the gas fee or whatever. So some of them are even doing things like, if we have people that are both in our accounts, can we just, our internal system, do the trade without having to, put it on the blockchain per se, at least at first, or things like that. These are ideas I've seen thrown out. So with the growing number of these large middlemen institutions, and I even see people appealing them when NFTs get stolen and stuff, which happens a lot. And stuff. It's starting to, it's some ways it's starting to look a lot like banks and financial institutions again, but remade. They're different, because they're on a different foundation, and in the different digital world versus new age. But it seems in some ways it's kind of a lot of this stuff is being remade in a new way.
Yeah.
And it's not the financial system isn't entirely centralized either, right? You have the banks, the stock markets, the Fed. These are all different institutions that are all acting for their own interest and do different things. But it's centralized because so I don't know. So blockchains seem like that's happening too, right? Large institutions are mainly starting to control them.
Oh yeah. So here's my interpretation of the like, decentralization idea. So think about that. The idea is pure, right? Pure idea is idealist is decentralization. But actually, in reality, you probably need to be hybrid. I need to do a little bit of like centralization as well. And it's at the beginning, very, very beginning. And analogy is think about democracy, right? There's no such thing as pure democracy, right? Now, American is
Or
democracy.
would it work well? I'll say.
Yeah. So when you implement it in a government, right, you have to have some kind of like non-democracy, not pure democracy. You have to implement something that is impure democracy in a way. So I think the idea of blockchain is similar. I mean, it's just one way to think about it, and I just draw an analogy. But yeah.
Mm-hmm. No, that's a good point, right? Like, I mean, I think your democracy analogy is good.
It's ideal, right? It's ideal.
There's an ideal, and nothing that works in the real world is going to be like perfectly perfectly pure.
Even a central idea of why decentralization is good is because of like, a lot of people can form consensus, but the fundamental idea of consensus is a good thing. It's actually it's kind of flawed too, right? Because consensus doesn't mean it's actually a good thing, right? So
yeah. It doesn't mean it's the right decision. It just means everyone agrees on it, or there's an agreement, which is
doesn't mean that's a necessarily good thing, right?
The hope is that a lot
doesn't
of
mean
people
it's better.
agreeing means it's the right decision. I mean, it's kind of the same thing as democracy. Your analogy is really on point, right? Like it's the idea that, well, if we have a lot of people get a lot of people to agree, then that's probably better. But
unnecessary.
We'll wrap it up for there.
Yeah.
And as much as I shit on this technology, I do think there's probably going to be some interesting and good applications for blockchain tech. Mm-hmm. But the more I learn more details about it, the more I feel like that's probably a narrow area where it really applies.
Yeah, a lot of people already made an analogy between that blockchain at early days of internet. You got a lot of nice shitty companies like Pets.com and stuff like that. Like they just like didn't do anything. They just have a name and IPO and people just buy in, right? And they crash. But nowadays everybody comes back to the idea like Pets.com now that's Chewy, right? Pet foods and then it's like everything's like I don't know. It's like and this moment is actually practical now to do it, right?
So that's true. I mean, for any new technology, right, you're going to have time where people are kind of exploring the space and a lot of new things will try and fail. That said, I think there's a meaningful difference between like the start of the internet and the start of blockchain, right? Like I feel like the internet has very obvious utility that no one was like the internet's not important, right? Like it's very obvious there's all sorts of things you could do with it. And then since then we've also learned all sorts of things people didn't think about in the first place. But like Bitcoin came out at like, I think it was right about the same time as the first iPhone, right? And like since then, like
2009, right after
like smartphones have become like a thing that is all over the world and changed a lot of how our lives live. Cryptocurrencies are still, I mean, they've gotten bigger, but the large majority of people don't have any crypto of anything and don't care about it, right? So I feel like it's definitely different than the internet or other things in terms of struggling to find that appeal or the killer app or the thing that really makes sense for it to be used, right?
I mean, was it obvious? I mean, in the early days of internet, it wasn't obvious, wasn't the right killer app either, right?
I mean, in the early days, they were just sharing information on like super simple websites and servers, right? But even that's like, I mean, sharing information quickly across large distances was before the internet existed, that's something people still tried to do different ways anyway, right? Like,
Okay. Well, anyway, so yeah, go ahead, Mike.
Well, no, I was just going to say the internet, I do think the internet, like in some sense, like was just like the modern day, or like a lot of people thought like, oh, it's like the modern day Pony Express. Like we're just going to like send emails and like messages really fast. But so, I mean, I don't think anyone would have anticipated like, or it may have been few people who anticipated like YouTube, like, oh, people are going to take 1,000 pictures a day and there's going to be like massive terabytes of information uploaded every half second, like worldwide. But
I mean, before the internet existed, didn't they have like Star Trek with, well, I mean, you still had things like TV and stuff, and they had like Star Trek where they'll like show you on a screen talking to someone else. I don't think it was that big of a leap to be like, oh, with the internet and things, maybe one day
we can do that.
Do that over the internet, like at the snap. And
No.
like I said, I'm sure there's a lot people didn't think about, but I think there's very obvious and easy conclusions you could draw of like, oh, this will probably happen in the future.
Well, I also think about, I more think it's a good point that like we've had sort of blockchain for a while, and there have been a lot of smart people thinking about like, what can we do with this? And nothing has necessarily hit yet. Or hit in as general population yet. So, because I mean, smart, I was just going to say smartphone, like they conceptualize that like in like the 90s. We didn't have like the infrastructure, like there was a company like trying to do it in like the 90s, but we just didn't have the like infrastructure for it. So,
yeah. Also, did you mention Pony Express?
Yeah,
he did say the Pony Express.
What the hell is Pony Express?
Like the mails, like before there was a post office, you'd send someone on a horse to deliver messages to people.
Oh, it was called Pony Express?
Yeah.
Is it actual term, or did you just invent it?
No,
I've heard of that. I don't know if that was it was a company. It was a specific company, I guess, in the past.
Pony Express? Not bad. Okay. So talking about like decentralization and centralization, actually, I think it's very good segue into my next topic. It's called Chesterton's fence. Have you heard of it?
Mm-mm.
Did you guys read it?
I did. Article? Should we have?
Yeah, of course.
Better to be fresh. You tell us.
That's the whole point. I know. That's the whole point. I posted it so you guys can read it and then explain it to audience. Because I'm very bad at explaining stuff to people. So
practice makes perfect.
So anyway, in a nutshell, Chesterton's fence is basically the article is Chesterton's fence, a lesson in second order thinking, basically thinking about unintended consequences. And the fence, what in a nutshell, what he says is that do not remove a fence until you know why it was put up in the first place, right? Because nowadays we see a lot of like maybe new generation of like people come around say, and then you see an old fence like in the middle of the road, right? And you say, oh, why is the fence here? It's not useless, so let's torn it down. But there's unintended consequence of doing that, right? Because you don't know why it was put out in the first place, right? People did not, spend time, waste energy to put out a fence for no reason, right? So basically, that's what it means. So it's caution that you need to understand why something is there in the first place before you torn a thing down. So a related note is about banks and centralization, I guess, right? Decentralization is always like, oh, let's scare out the banks and then let's make it decentralized better. But I think what you talked about earlier made me think about maybe these purists about like decentralization. I don't think they understand enough like why centralization was there in the first place, right?
Right, like why the banks and financial systems do what they do and act as they do.
Yeah, and the way it is. So that's one example you can think about it. Like maybe decentralization. There's a reason since centralization is there. Before you understand why it's there, don't try to remove it. Right? Like,
and it's certainly not that no one could improve the banking system we have, but I do think there are people who don't understand why the things are, and then so they're remaking it and then relearning like painful lessons about like, this is why this was, this is why things were like this, because
yeah, exactly. Now you can apply it to your organizations, right? Now, organizations, your team, your other stuff, your life, and whatever you encounter every day, you probably see a lot of nice stuff that doesn't make sense to you as you walk through the I don't know, living your life or something like that. But I think a lot of nice, maybe governments, right? There's a lot of policies that doesn't really make sense to you at first glance, but actually there might be a good reason for it, right? So at least it's not saying that that is like not removing anything, not getting rid of any fence, but the caution is that you need to understand why, the reason behind it in the first place before you do anything about it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking a lot about Matt's favorite topic, like housing policies.
Mm-hmm.
So like understanding if the fence is like, is this, like we can't build a skyscraper here because like it's not sustainable for that particular infrastructure, or like just because the people in the area petitioned like because they didn't want a skyscraper there, and that's like which fence is it, I guess, and that may depend on the location.
Yeah. Well, if you understand why they really understand why they don't want a skyscraper in the first place, then you can change it, right? You don't just go in and change it right away because you want a skyscraper. But if you understand what the people, the reason behind their decision, then you can actually change it. If you think it's unreasonable, then doesn't apply anymore, then you should change it, right? So
yeah, in the general sense, there's a lot of talk these days about like, at least from the Republicans, are like, oh, we got to get rid of all these like dumb regulations. And yeah, I think a nuanced view is needed because there are too many regulations and there are bad regulations, but some of them are important, some of them are not. How do you tell which is which? And yes, the first one that comes to my mind when I think bad regulations is, I think, a lot of housing policy and its zoning and the tremendous harm they've done to, our entire country and economy. But, for the purpose of people maintaining, people not wanting change or to inflate their own house's value, which are not good reasons.
Yeah, cool. Can you think of any other examples? Come to your mind? I mean, yeah, if not, it's fine. I think you talk about one already. Is the regulation, the housing stuff. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, it's a good analogy though. You're right. Like if you can understand why something was done, then you have a much better idea of if it's a good idea to remove it or how to improve it or to avoid making the same mistake. Yeah. And then as you said, it doesn't mean never change what's done. It just means to evaluate.
It's like sort of, I guess, whenever you ask a question, like sort of the researcher in you wants to say like, I mean, like the first step of answering any question is basically doing like a huge review of like what's been done. And that's because, and actually like I was at a meeting, and a point was brought up that was actually pretty good. Like there was like, I don't remember her name, but she was at Berkeley and she was like the grandmother of robotics. And she basically argued like we always publish these papers saying like what worked really well. But she's like, that's how we try to present the work. Like I did this and it worked really well. But she's like, we don't have like papers published, or very rarely that it's like, this didn't work at all. Like these are the 4 things we did that didn't work at all. And basically it's like, a year of wasted time. She's like, whether it's like published in a different type of, journal or paper or whatever, like those should exist. And that would sort of help, I guess, maybe understand why people did what they like, give a better context about like why the fence is where it is. So for a particular problem.
Mm-hmm.
So.
You say Berkeley, the grandmother of robotics?
Yeah.
Who the hell is that? Not Cynthia Brazil? She's at MIT.
No. I know this was an older professor. I don't remember her name. It had to be the PI meeting probably for the whatever grant I was on.
Cool. All right.
No, she was, yes, but that was I liked her point. Like basically, like people make decisions for not what like. I mean, there are some papers you read where you're like, oh, this doesn't seem to be a particularly good paper, and part of the reason maybe it's like not that good of a paper is like they had to make considerations based on what didn't work or what like doesn't exist yet, but they sort of gloss that over. And it would be useful to like be like, okay, like, they tried to, go for a home run, but the home run failed for these reasons. So like,
Oh, so now you're talking about like paper doesn't have good result, but they do have like talk about stuff they try and it did not work.
Yeah, I mean essentially,
failed experiments. A lot of paper just like produce result. Oh, this is a good experiment, but not a lot of paper talk about like failed experiments.
So, right.
I think it's too idealistic to have like, entire papers on just negative results, but maybe you could have like a section or appendix that says, here's like the list of things we did in summary that like didn't work or didn't work well, like on the way to like solving this. Like that would be nice. That would be more reasonable and nice, right? To be able to like, oh, we tried X, Y, Z.
Yeah. Now, this is an idea that I've had, but like in a way, again, democratizing publication. But like rather than just having like people write journal articles, it's like, hey, I worked on this for 6 months to a year, and it's like now I'm going to put like the best of in like a conference or a journal paper. Like basically, people write sort of like blog posts that like honestly just like an NLP like fucking algorithm just like distributes to people with like ideas and like projects going on. And basically it's just like, hey, this is sort of what we're working on this week. And like, here are some basic results. And like, I mean, you can organize it into like final papers, but like, if there wasn't like the constant concern of people stealing ideas and like wanting to get credit, like, in a paper with citations and stuff, it would be nice if it was just like, sort of like, hey, every week I'm going to write like a couple paragraphs and just like share, like, here's what I'm doing, because that would actually facilitate like things like that. Like, hey, we spent the last 2 weeks on this. It didn't work at all. So we're just abandoning it or whatever. So, but I think even in academic settings, and like, I get why it's just too competitive, because that, if you have a good idea, people will steal it. And if you have lots of bad ideas, then I guess people won't replicate them in parallel. So it's, you're giving people a head start on you, basically. So.
All right.
All right. Charleston fence.
What?
So that was called Charleston's fence?
Yeah.
Chesterton's.
Chesterton. Yep.
All right.
You should read the article. It's pretty interesting anyway. So, all right. So, cool. Let's get into the main topic. The 5 dysfunctions of a team. Did you guys look at the picture, Anis?
Yes. Also, this sounds like a clickbait article that you get on like an ad for a website.
Wow. So, actually, book title, and that's how it should be, right? It's always should
clickbait.
Not clickbait, right? Otherwise, what's the point of you opening the book, right? Now, one of my favorite book is the 4-Hour Work Week. It's a good title, right? You say, oh, yeah. Anyway, so you want to outline? Yeah, Matt, can you outline the 5 dysfunctions for us?
I can. This is your topic, Shu, and this is the book you read. I think you need to outline it.
Okay, all right. So the model is forming a pyramid shape. So in the bottom base of the pyramid, the first dysfunction is the absence of trust.
Mm-hmm.
The second is the fear of conflict, and then the third dysfunction is lack of commitment, and then the fourth dysfunction is avoidance of accountability, and then the fifth dysfunction is inattention to results. Right? So these are basically the 5 dysfunctions. So yeah, let's go dive into the first dysfunction. Since it's from trust, I guess it's trust, right? The absence of trust. So what do you think that means for you guys?
You don't trust your team. Like, so, I mean, on like any team, the purpose of having a team is people specialize at least to some degree in what they're doing. And if you don't trust people to like do their job, then, it's going to lend you to, it's basically going to make you question them, potentially micromanage, or potentially not care about your job as much, if you don't trust them to do theirs well. So, yeah, so on a team, if everyone trusts each other to do what they're supposed to do, then it allows you to just focus on what you're supposed to be doing and do the best you can on it. So.
Sounds good. What about you, Matt?
I mean, I think I'd say pretty much the same thing. Like, yeah, if you don't trust your team, that implies you're going to either have to check their work or redo stuff or do stuff on your own and not rely on your team, which kind of removes the point of having a team, which is that they'll do stuff so you don't have to, right?
So
it might not be the main reason I have to, but that's the goal, right?
I guess let's rephrase again. So what does trust mean for you guys?
Trust would mean like you don't have worry or concern that they're going to do what they say they're going to do. Like you trust that they'll get what they're supposed to do done and do it well enough.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's basically it. Yeah. I mean, I believe in their abilities to do what they say they're going to do. Basically.
Okay.
So
Gotcha.
believe. Well, maybe abilities is the wrong word, but abilities and will actually follow through on what they say. So.
Yeah. Okay. So cool. So I guess you guys are very much focused on the work-wise, like getting the more like functional trust in a way, like function. Like you trust your teammate to do something. It's ability, like they're competent to do it, right? But for this, I guess the author on the book is about anything. It's applied to any team. Is that the ability to trust is the ability like to be. This is already like squishy term, more like vulnerable to your teammates, right? Which means like you can open up to your teammates, right? You trust like it's not like you just like like a therapy session or something. It's more about like whatever you say, you can very easily open up to your teammate about your own weaknesses, right? About your own weakness, like what you are bad at, and what are you, maybe your strength and weakness. Mostly like weakness. Also like have the trust your teammate to like if you say something, you criticize them something, you trust that they will not be offended because you are a team, you trust each other, right? You know that it's coming from a good for the good on the team. It's not like personally attacking you. Like you say, you're not doing your job correctly, you suck or stuff like that, right? It's more about have a trust that your team have very good intentions toward each other, so you can like trust them to open up to be not vulnerable, I guess, in a way, right? So like you can openly talk about your personal or just work wise, right? You can talk about your issues, open to debate, just keep talking, right? So you are not worried about hurting like the other person, like offending the other person or something like that, right? By calling them out or something, right? Stuff like that. So
that's interesting. Yeah.
Not holding back with the other, right? So a lot of times, because if you just like thinking about, you trust your teammate to get the work done, but actually it's more about, I guess the book is more about in the context of like not an engineering team, more like executive team, right? So I think because you guys both have been probably like very engineering team focused, right? So that's why trust is like you don't make like big the decision about company, right? The direction of company, a team direction, right? You were talking about like working in a team, also most like executing a decision already, like or some decisions about like implementing some robotic algorithm or something, or robotic stuff like that, right? So that kind of I think even in that team, actually, if you don't trust each other, sometimes you are afraid of criticizing other teams, your teammates' ideas, and you just that's a good idea. Let's just execute it, right? You don't spend enough time like criticizing it. So that's why I really enjoy working with Matt during the DARPA Robotic Challenge, because when I have an idea, throw it out there, he always say, this is a terrible idea. Cause even though he shut me down, because I actually enjoy it, because he actually like, I wasn't really offended at the thing. I actually enjoy it because I like my idea being challenged, right? So even when you shut it down, when I'm so excited about Bitcoin, blockchain and stuff, you always, this is a terrible idea, which I actually like that when you challenge me on that. So share out my idea. So yeah. So actually, so that's because you learn from there, right? So yeah.
Right. Well, yeah. So, I mean, the way I guess I'm thinking about this is like, I guess so these are teams, as you talk about, like the executive level. Maybe it's like Matt and I were framing what we said more on like an engineering team side, where it's like, basically you have like a very clear goal, and it's just like, different, like you can break down that goal into like sub pieces, and each person can execute a piece of it. But on an executive team, it's almost like it's not like the goal isn't necessarily as clear, and
Exactly.
and the team is working. Like, I guess the team is a bunch of like interpersonal relationships almost. Like, so it's like you need, like, in order to like move toward the goal, like you need a like solid, like the trust is more about like, I know this person like values me, as opposed to like that allows you to criticize them, right? Like if you know there's sort of like a value there and the person respects you, like that allows you to like criticize the idea without like the
person.
Right, exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
So
yeah, there's going to be a big difference when you have, things that can't be broken down into individual tasks and just get like distributed out to everyone, right? When you have an executive team making one decision together, the dynamics are going to be different, more complicated.
Yeah, even with I think even though the book is more focused on executive team, I think that applies to engineering teams as well, right? Even the part of breaking things down, like how do you break things down? If you just assign team to your people that working in your team, right? How do you assign it? And that's if you don't have debate when you're assigning it. Some people might take the task without debating, but then they might not be very committed to the task. They just do it because the team agreed to it. But for example, during the meeting, right, you were assigning tasks, and the person that may be afraid of speaking up because they don't trust. They have some trust, but they don't have enough trust to speak up, say, oh, I don't really like to do this test. I would say, oh, maybe I'm bad at it, right? And I'm not really actually good enough to do this test. It's afraid of the other team member who say, oh, you are admitting your weakness, so you suck, and you should just get fired or something, right? So when there's no trust like that, and they will take the job, they will take the task, but you actually delay the team, right? The goal of team, because they are not actually using their strength. Maybe there's other tasks that better suiting them, but they were afraid of speaking up because, they were afraid of saying, oh, I might not be the best person for the task.
Sure.
Right?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's just many, like, trust is so, because I like the more we talk about this, like, okay, so a team essentially is like, I guess a general definition could be a team is a collection of individuals working toward a common goal, right?
Yes.
So as you like, so assuming this goal isn't like, just super well defined and very easy, like it isn't something that's just obvious to break down. There's sort of like step one is to define the goal.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I guess step two would be, like sort of breaking down the goal into like subtasks or like some like sort of waypoints, like to help achieve the goal. And step three would be like handing out, those tasks as they come up. And then step four, et cetera, would be like more like the implementation of and carrying out of. So, I mean, you can have, it's like I could trust someone to be like, oh, that's that person's really good with like ideas. Like that person comes up with like really interesting ideas when it comes to like defining the goal. Like they have a really good sense of like, financial constraints and, whatever else may factor into like our goal, for what we're trying to solve. But that person is kind of lazy when it comes to actually carrying out their weight. So it's like they'll come out with an idea, but they won't like implement it well if I give them too much or too big a sub problem. So it's like you can trust someone in some respects, but not trust, like, in one step of the process, you can be like, this person's good at this, but not so good at this. So
actually, for me, again, I think you're still thinking in terms of like competence and capabilities, right? let's assume, everybody's competent. But I think the trust actually in your scenario actually is a good example too. So the trust, for example, if your team have trust, that means you will tell the person, call out the person, hey, you are being lazy on that, right? You actually call out a weakness. But if your team does not have trust, you be afraid of telling the person that you feel like he's lagging behind, not pulling his weight. That's the difference between the team with trust and the team without trust. Not you trusting his ability to do stuff. It's more like trust in a way. Interpersonally, you can not afraid of calling out a person when he's not pulling his weight.
I mean, I guess that
you don't agree with that trust definition of trust.
Well, I just feel like it's not as binary as that, right? It's like, yeah, I could trust, like I could say to like one person, there could be one stage in the process where I feel like this person has proven that they're like a good idea man. Like we've talked through ideas before, and it's like, hey, like I'm not feeling this idea. Here's why, and I feel like he could receive that well. Whereas like maybe they're, sort of moving, like, they're a new engineer, like, they're sort of like, they haven't necessarily been as part of the engineering processes before. And I need to sort of like frame that differently. Like there's less of a rapport there, compared to like the talking out of ideas. There's less of a rapport when it comes to, oh, this person is new in, and they may be more sensitive to like how I handle that conflict there. Like, I mean, like as someone who's relatively new, like when it comes to like making presentations or something, like, or talking to like clients of a company, like that's something I would be like new at. Like, so it's like, I feel like my boss probably like handles like me, like versus like a research, like the research I do, he may be more quick to be like, well, what about this? What about this? What about this? Versus like if a presentation, he may like handle me differently. So I guess there's like different levels of trust there about like how I'll respond to critique or whatever.
Well, yeah. I've talked about, I mean, you say new member of a team, right? New member, of course, it took a while. You need to build trust in the first place, right?
Yeah.
So I guess for the book, I guess the more focus about the interpersonal like trust. It's not really focused on your ability to do stuff. More like how do you trust your team member to to call each other out, to have good conflicts, right? Which actually leads to, I think you talked about it too, to the trust. Absence of trust is the first dysfunctional of the team, and then trust is the foundation, basically the big foundation to the team. So if you don't have that, you will lead to the second dysfunction, which is the fear of conflict, right? Because if you don't trust each other, you actually afraid of debating stuff, basically. And I talk about like criticize each other, right? Second, I think that's pretty kind of, does the second dysfunction make sense to you guys?
Yeah, I think this one's pretty
straightforward.
Well, straightforward. I mean, you already mentioned it in your earlier example, talking about how, I would always tear your ideas down. But if you can't, openly, discuss things and criticize things because you're afraid of conflict or hurting people's feelings or something like that, you're not going to come to as good of a conclusion, right?
Yeah. Because a lot of people, like, for example, I think sometimes I'm afraid of asking questions, asking stupid questions because, oh, this is so dumb, I don't want to ask this question but actually because you lack trust with the person you were talking, right? The team. Because, then the question might be a good question, right? You're just a little bit insecure, intellectual insecure in front of your team. So I'm still working on that, but still, right? So so those, the fear of conflicts, and then also sometimes there's go ahead.
Well, no, I was just gonna say, like, I guess that's what I'm trying to communicate, which I'm doing poorly, is just like basically like, and you said it earlier, but like you build trust, but you build trust in different areas. Like that, like if you're broaching a new topic with the same people, you can like there can be an absence of trust in that new area, right? Like, so you can feel like, oh, I'm bringing up something that I feel incompetent in this area. And it's like, you almost need to like reestablish trust with each successive thing. Like,
well, yeah, again, I feel like you are just single-mindedly very focused on competence, right? Do you think? What do you think, Matt? Do you think Mike is too focused on like competence? Like, trust is not. I feel like it's about interpersonal, right? You don't need to build a different area.
That's what I was gonna say, and I think I'm leaning towards Shu on this one, where Shu / the book is talking about the trust between people and like in trust in the personal relationship and the team relationship.
As a teammate,
what they're focused on. So if you have the relationship good, I mean, obviously there'll be new things you do, like that might be different than old ones. And there might be different types of jobs and stuff. And, people are going to have different levels of experience and skill at different types of jobs. Like that's all, of course, but like the team is still, if the team's not changing, right, the team relationship is the same no matter what, thing you're covering.
Yeah, no, I mean, I guess that's true. I mean, it's just, the
relationship between you and your boss, like if you have a good relationship of trust, then that implies that, well, with the stuff he's okay, he'll be able to, you'll be able to ask him questions in the areas where you don't know. He'll be able to rely on you in the areas he knows you're good at. It goes like the trust between you two works, whether it's an area you're good or bad, competent or incompetent at, right?
Yeah. No, I mean, so competence is more about like if you're making a decision between you and your boss or something, maybe you, as a team, right? If there's a decision, but there's a conflict between them because most people don't agree on a decision, right? Always have opinions, stuff like that. Right. So if you don't have the trust, you're afraid of voicing your opinions. Oh, this is a bad decision. And your boss is saying, oh, this is a good decision. You are basically afraid of like saying, oh, this is a terrible decision. Let's do something else. Right. It's more about like, it's not about dividing up the goal and then whose responsibility is not executing it. It's more about at a higher level, we're deciding what the goal actually is. Right. Sometimes you have a boss that decide on this goal, but you need to speak out if you don't agree with the goal, right, in the first place, right? So, Anyway, so a fear of conflict, like you see that in a lot of teams, if you see like back teams, I guess they would be afraid of like voicing their opinions, like basically debating, like became very heated. So actually, like, as you talked about earlier, like parenting, right? Like kids, when they have conflicts, they, fighting each other. Actually, that's a good thing. You shouldn't let them, like fight each other out, stuff like that. And instead of like stopping it, right? I mean, so conflict actually is good, right? Like debates in a team is a good thing, right?
Cool. I would say task-based is a good thing.
Task? What are you talking about?
Healthy conflict, we'll say.
Yeah.
Healthy conflict is good. Obviously, conflict.
Of course. Yeah. Of course, you have some team members have like very maybe disrupted to the team and stuff like that, But fundamentally, because maybe they do that because they don't trust their team. So you have unhealthy conflicts like the two, right? Yeah. So which fear of conflict actually, if you don't have enough conflict in the team, which will lead to the third dysfunction, which is the lack of commitment. Any thoughts on that?
I see how lack of commitment could be an issue. I don't see how a fear of conflict leads to a lack of commitment.
Because, well, I mean, I guess if you don't want to argue about stuff, you basically just don't put thought into it. You just sort of say yes.
Exactly. Exactly.
Mm.
I think Mike nailed it. So it's like, so
you'll agree, but that doesn't really make you committed.
Yeah.
Well, you have a different idea. Like, I think this should be done this way, but this person said, I think it should be done this other way. And you're just like, oh yeah, sure. Like, I don't want to say no. So yeah.
Yeah.
So even if you go along with it, you're not like mentally on board or, in your heart, you're not committed.
Exactly. So what happens is like, if you feel you did not voice your opinions, right? And then you did not voice, like you have a lot of disagreements in a team, like debating a single decision. You have different direction you want to go in, and then you did not voice your opinions, if you voice your opinions in a way like highly debated already, and then you still come to a decision, right? Since you voice your opinion already, you're debated already, you since, and then you actually commit to the decision because you kind of, since you already, I guess, voice your opinions already, you kind of, okay, I always say, I guess voice, I mean, say what I got to say, right? So since this is team's decision, I'm going to commit it to it because I guess the team already took into account my opinions and stuff like that, my debate, why it's a bad idea, but they still go for it. But I got to commit to this because, this is what team decides, right? So if you did not voice your opinion, you might, I don't know, holding grudge, I guess, okay, like afraid of speaking up, and then you'll be less committed to the decision, which is something you guys talk about already. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So, so it's like, it's something they call like, you don't get buy-in to the decision, I guess. Like you don't commit, you're not buying to the decision, right? If you debate it already, then you voice your opinion, you get a buy-in basically from every member. So that's why it's important. And then kind of like disagree, and then commit. That's one of the sayings, right? Disagree and commit. Disagree, then commit, right? So yeah. And of course, then I guess this lack of commitment leads to the fourth dysfunction, with avoidance of accountability. What do you think?
This one makes sense to me. Okay. In this hypothetical, executive group, you didn't voice your opinion and have conflict, so you didn't commit or buy in. And then when something goes poorly, maybe with the stuff you were doing, you're just like, well, it wasn't my idea. This was just a dumb idea.
Yeah.
I didn't want to do this in the first place.
Yeah.
Boom.
What about you, Mike?
No, I think that's basically it. If you're not committed and you're sort of just half-assing it, then
and then it's easy to be like, yeah, that wasn't my fault.
Right. Yeah. I wanted to do something else.
Yeah. That makes sense too. I think that works too. I would say I would, from the book, actually, I think it extended a little bit more. It's more about holding your team members accountable, right? So for example, if I don't buy into the decision, I'm not committed to the decision. If my what do you call that? Like my teammate, I see my teammates are executing it and he's not doing it correctly and he's not performing. Since I'm not committed to it, I would not try to hold my team member accountable, because I will not call out, hey, you're not doing according to a standard, right? So you have a very basically low standard because you don't call out your teammate when you see the result is bad, right? So whatever they do is not doing the right thing. So holding your team is, I think holding it also, you apply to your personal. You're not really doing a good job yourself because you not really buy into the decision, committed, but also because you try to avoid accountability because you are avoiding holding your teammates accountable, which is hard, right? Because if you think you're not committed, because that means you need to confront your teammate, right? To say, hey, you're not doing a good job, which can be hard, can be very hard, right? So holding other people accountable is even harder in a team, right? Because yeah. So I think that's one of the book interpretation, which makes sense to me too. Yeah, because of course, it leads to, if you don't have trust, you will not hold your teammate accountable because you're afraid of confronting your teammates, basically. And then, which you resolve. In the end, of course, that means your team is gonna do a very bad job because you're not calling out your teammates when they are not achieving to the standards, right? Yeah. Cool. So, all right. Of course, the last, which the avoidance of accountability leads to the last dysfunction, is inattention to results, right? Any thoughts on this?
Yeah, basically, I think we sort of talked about it already, but it's just, like when you don't care and you're sort of avoiding accountability, so you're not holding your teammates accountable, you're not holding yourself accountable, then it doesn't matter if it's like good or bad results. It's just like, it's sort of like people talk about showing up to their jobs to like just hammer a paycheck or something. It's like,
Exactly.
I mean, basically that's what this would be. It's just like I did my job for 8 hours that day. I don't care if I did a good or a bad job. I did it. So.
What about you, Matt?
No, I think, yeah, the same thing. I don't have anything insightful to add.
Yeah. So if your team is not functioning as team, like for example, you have one single goal for the team. For example, like sports team, I think this is might be a good analogy to the sports teams, right? For sports teams, right, the goal is to win championships, right? Like basketball team, like NBA, to win championships, right? So in attention to the goal, that means that individual team member, they will actually try to do what's best for themselves instead of what's best for the team, the results, right? So you have like James Harden who try to shoot all 3-pointers, stuff like that, right? So individually, then the athlete might be very, very good. So they will try to go for like, okay, I need maybe status, right? They go like in your company, right? You go for status, maybe a salary, as you're talking about the money, and then ego. You try to make yourself look good instead of trying to make the team look good, right? So instead of like try to go for like individual records instead of winning a championship for the team, right? So so that's why you are. So that's why So that's the last dysfunction, because an individual team member is actually not focused on a single goal of the team, but actually doing what's best for themselves. So that's
Yeah. Before you even started the sports analogy, I think that's a really good analogy. And I was thinking about like a lot of this has to do, around individual ego and the idea of like getting the team to, trying to get members of the team to sort of drop that, right? And act, as if they're not an individual in some sense, right? Like, trust everyone fully to like share ideas and disagree without worrying about conflict between themselves, get everyone to buy in on the same ideas, everyone to act like it's their own idea that they're trying to, do work on and care about it as much. It seems a lot of it, you could say it's really about being sort of trying to drop your individual person in some sense.
Exactly.
While you're in the context of working as a team, obviously. You don't want to you don't want to do that forever. But
actually that reminds me of what my definition of team earlier. I think Mike, you say that a team is a collection of individuals, right? Actually, no. If you're a dysfunctional team, if your team there's no trust, you have a lot of fear of conflicts, lack of commitment, right? All these dysfunctions, you have a collection of individuals. You don't have a team. A team is something that's bigger than a collection of individuals, right? It's like 1 + 1 is equal to 2, but if you have a team, 1 + 1 is equal to, I don't know, 10, right? So
sure, right. Well, no, I mean, I agree. I think again we're getting in. So like just like with blockchain and democracy and everything else, there's sort of the like ideal versus what's realistic. So I mean, yes, ideal. Like I guess a team, yes, would essentially function such that there's ego death, and they're all totally open with each other and stuff. But I mean, I think that was sort of what I was getting at earlier with like trust. Like yes, in an ideal setting, no one would have an ego, or no one would have like, sort of an identity, and they'd be totally open to expressing any and all ideas with each other, and those would be received in a healthy way. But that isn't going to happen. And like, there's going to be identity. Like there's going to be people that like have individual identities and like individual things that like are more and less important to their identities, and more and less important that they'll be willing to share. So I guess it's just basically about fostering an environment that's as open as possible to build that foundation. So
yeah, of course. I mean that's why there's so many teams and they're failing out there, right? Because building a team that's like good team, like functional team is hard, right? It's very hard.
Well, and
right?
particularly
because of
over
egos
time.
on the other stuff, right?
Well, particularly over time, right?
Yeah.
Because the like individual identity evolves, and that like the team needs to evolve together, as opposed to like, but oftentimes it's the individuals evolving. Like there are at least pieces of the individuals that evolve independently, and that can, and like as much as they may have trust in previous things that they looked at, they may not have trust moving forward, like, with as egos grow and change. So,
yeah. Go ahead.
Does the book ever talk about like the military as an example of this? Because I feel like if you're going to think of like a good example for like building like a really strong team, like, I mean, the military has some unfair advantages, right? Because it can actually like yank people out and just like isolate them with the team like 24/7, right? Like remove all of the other things in their lives that would, could distract them or, cause conflicts in terms of what their goals or interests are. But like, like the military, they can like have a team of people that train together, learn together, get shipped off together, fight together, right? And they do everything. And I feel like if you're going to get an example of like a team that's like the closest to the ideal team, that would be it, right?
Yeah. Actually, the book did not talk about anything about military. However, I read a book called Extreme Ownership by one of the Navy SEALs. He was like a commander or something. And then he talked about that too, because the extreme ownership in the book is about teamwork, basically. Like, and it's about ownership, right? Ownership of your accountability too, right? He did talk about like something in the military called alignment. Like, you commit to the mission, right? Actually, communicate the mission to all your teams, right? So they can have voice in their opinions. Because a lot of times, actually, he did talk about the illusion that actually military is the easiest way to commit to a mission and just execute it, right? And he actually talked about that is an illusion actually, because it's not easy in military either. Because in military you have a mission, and if you don't have buy-in from all your team soldiers, actually you're gonna fail the mission. You're gonna fail because you're not committed to the mission, and you don't have alignment of goals. An individual soldier will have different, even though it's easier. You can just command and do stuff, but if they are not committed to the mission, or you don't have your goal aligned, you don't explain your mission to all your team members, right? Even you are a commander and you don't explain your mission to them and let them have a voice, like their opinions and stuff like that, they'll be disgruntled, carry on a mission. They don't have buy-in. That means you don't have a good team. That means your mission is going to fail. So that's the only thing I talk about. Anything I learned from that book about military. Yeah. So I think actually it's kind of similar idea here. Right? I found that similar. Yeah. So
I mean, the military doesn't necessarily like have a whole lot of trust, like bottom up, like the soldiers are just supposed to take what they're told. So I mean, I guess. Well,
good team has trust. Good team has trust. Doesn't mean every team in military is a functional team, right? There's a lot of dysfunction in military teams as well. Nice, and the leader depends who the leader is, right? If the leader know how to build a good team, then you have a good team, right? But that's why you need good leaders in the first place to do that.
Well, the hard part about the military is when you're talking about a mission, you're talking about something that might actually get people killed, right? So there's a heavy, I guess buy-in can be harder, right? Because the consequences of failure are about as bad as they can possibly be, right?
Yeah. So that's why you need to trust your leader, your commander, who is leading you. You trust your life to him because you actually trust that he has the best intention. He's looking out for you guys, right? Looking out for you, and he was like maybe sacrificing himself before he just, let you guys die, basically, right? So that's. If you have that kind of leader, you have that kind of trust, the team is going to be good, right? So, I mean, you probably see that in movies too, right? It's very relatable, yeah. But it's very hard. It's very easy to build a dysfunctional team, like destroy a team, but it's very hard to build a very strong team. So, yeah,
it's easy to gather a collection of individuals. Yes. It's hard to make a team.
Exactly. Perfect.
That's the name of the episode.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. Actually, I want to go back to the lack of commitment a little bit. I think there's two things that mentioned in the book about lack of commitment. The cause of lack of commitment are two, basically. The first one is a desire for consensus, right? So why do you think that would be bad?
I mean, is that like the jury problem of like one person doesn't agree and just won't, and you just have to like you have to be able to move on even if everyone doesn't agree?
Yeah. The decision, right? Even you don't agree, you have still need to. No decision is better than a decision is better than no decision, basically, right? Now your team, otherwise just paralyzed, right? So a bad team would try to get consensus, which is bad for the team, basically, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, desire consensus. And were you gonna say anything, Mike?
Well, I was just saying. Well, this may not be related, but I was thinking about like a long.
I just want to say I disagree with you.
Yeah, that's right. But like a while ago, you talked about like how when you're exploring options, like, and you think about like you could explore like 100 different options for a certain problem. Like it's often better to just like explore like, like the first 10 and pick the best one, like, basically pick the best one out of the 10. So it's often like there's this trade-off between like efficiency versus like getting like globally optimal solution.
Yeah.
And, basically like finding a like more locally optimal solution is but doing so in a reasonable amount of time is probably the best course of action. So it's like, if people are like, if there's two ideas that are bouncing back and forth and most people say one idea is probably pretty good, then just go with it for the sake of efficiency. So.
Yeah. Really, you're talking about a non-optimal stopping problem in computer science.
Yes.
Yeah. Also, kind of remind me of maybe it's the calculating too much, but not thinking enough. I don't know.
Yeah.
And then, yeah. And then the other one, I think the second cause of lack of commitment is the desire for certainty. Right? What do you think?
It's very related, I guess. I mean, like, well, if a consensus is, symbolic of certainty, like, because everyone's like, yeah, that's the answer, like, that I guess lends itself to being like, oh, this is a really good solution, like everyone's on board. But the world is not a perfect machine, so.
Yeah.
I could see how it come from that, but could you have it separate from disagreements and be like, everyone agrees this is like the best idea we think we have, but no one's incredibly confident that it will work, right? No one can think of anything better, right? They're like, oh, the best odds are 50-50, something like that, right? So if you're, even with a consensus, if you're not confident, maybe you'll could miss commitment, which would of course make the odds even worse. Is that where the book was going at, Shu? Or
I think the book was going more like the decision is like it's more about like decision is uncertain in nature, right? When you like in a team, you make a decision, and there's a multiple decision, and you pick a single decision, you don't know how you're gonna work out, right? And a lot of times, people the team member desire to have a certainty of the decision, try to pick the best decision in a way, right? So anyway, I think we beat that to the death now. So let's kind of conclude this discussion with something that a definition that actually I really like what the book has, which is a definition of politics. Right, politics like in a company, in an organization, and stuff like that. So before I reveal, I guess, the definition that I like from the book, I guess, what's your definition of politics for you guys?
Don't know.
You don't know?
I mean, I guess
because we talk about politics all the time. Say, our company, this company has too much politics, and especially in academia, right, university, there's a lot of politics. But what exactly is politics, right? I don't think it's very defined anywhere.
Yeah, in that context, I feel like politics is almost like the implication if someone's playing politics is that they're doing things for their own benefits, not the benefit of the team or the group or the country or whatever.
Okay.
And I think that stems from the idea that, people often think politicians are just trying to enrich themselves and not actually like help the country, right? So in that sense, that's what I would
pretty
say
good
politics
definition,
means.
actually. Yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah. What about you, Mike?
I mean, I just think about, yes, like when people are, well, I wasn't necessarily thinking about playing. When I think about someone says like my politics, what they're talking about is like my beliefs about issue, like essentially the collection of beliefs about issues that are, I guess, issues that like relate to society more at large, or like at least other people. So,
Wait, what about people saying that you're playing politics in a company, in a team?
Yeah.
What does that mean to you?
It's almost like a different definition from the like.
We're
It's
not
like
talking about like
word,
politics
right?
instead of like belief. We're talking about like playing politics in a
oh,
company.
well, that's politicking, I guess. Yes. So,
Yeah, what does that mean? Yes, so what does that mean to you?
No one
when
says
someone...
politicking. Okay, I'm just gonna say this.
Well, I would say politicking. Yeah, I mean, I think Matt basically covered politicking. So, I mean, it's really, yes, it's just sort of you're trying to. I mean, I think you're trying to maybe like get on the good side of someone who could help you. That often means like, so if you're politicking, it's like you're maybe sucking up to the boss, like trying to find like common ground with the boss to try to sway, like a promotion in your favor or something like that. So,
Yeah. Okay.
So I mean, I think it comes from basically like politics, like politicians will often like politic to get voters, right? Like they'll promise people like, hey, I share all the same values you do, so vote for me, right?
Yeah.
So
I think, those both of your definitions very similar to what I had, I think, in mind previously, right? So in the book's definition, I like it because it's a bit different from like I ever heard before, right? So the book's definition of politics actually is when people choose their work and actions based on how they want others to react rather than based on what they really think. Right. So in a team, right, that's when you have playing like there's too much politics in a team, is because you are choosing your words and action based on what you want other people to react rather than what you really think. So you're not really being truthful to others, and then just saying things because you saying this what other people want to hear. Right. Anyway, I like it because it's counter to like it's different from what I known before. Like, but anyway, what do you think about that?
I mean, like as soon as you brought this up, I just think about like, I mean, yes, politicians will say things to like, essentially like, they'll say things to keep voters, and I mean, it's sort of, it makes sense, I guess, right? Because like we've talked about, like the foundation of anything is like an absolute trust. Like you're able to like express, say, I don't know, or you're able to say like, this is one of my weaknesses or whatever. But politicians lack trust in voters because voters could vote them out. Like it's literally like, as you say, like, the voters literally could say what you said the person would, like, oh, you should be fired because you can't do it. Like, so it's sort of, it's interesting. So when you brought it up, I was like, oh, that's a good fit. So.
What about you, Matt?
I think the definition you gave, it's pretty, I mean, I think it's similar. It's just maybe a little bit more down to the sort of like the bare, like more precise is the way I'd say it, right? Like,
exactly, yeah.
It's very precise.
More fundamental.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. More fundamental. You're doing something, because I said like, oh, to benefit yourself, which is very often what people are going to be politicking for, to help themselves, but not necessarily. Like in general, yeah, they're doing something to get the right reaction. So I like it.
Yeah, exactly. I think just realize I like it because I think it's more fundamental than because a lot of time you have definition, but it doesn't really apply to a lot of stuff. But this one actually, since it's more fundamental, it kind of apply to a lot of scenarios, kind of in a way. You can see it through this definition, the lens of this definition. You can recognize, okay, there's a lot of politics here because you're doing this. Yeah.
And I feel like the way it's defined maybe helps. I like how the way it's defined frames it in a way that makes it seem worse. Because I feel like there's plenty of people who will be, say, of course I'm going to do what's benefits for me, right? Like, why else would I not do what's best for me? And sometimes in some situations, it's like, well, maybe, it's not necessarily easy to say that's wrong or right. But, when you frame it as you're not saying what you think, you're saying what you want to get the right reaction, it's more clear that you're basically manipulating people around you, rather than, being honest, which is another way, beyond whether it's self-serving or not is another, question of, is that actually what you want to be doing? Right.
Yeah. That's good. I like your wrapping it around. So that's very good. Cool. That's all I got.
All right. I don't need to read this book.
Yeah, it's a very simple book, actually. It's very, very easy book too.
All right. I have one question for you. So assuming you're, a mid-level lackey like me and Mike or you, and not, running an executive team, what would you say, as a lesson for someone who's not running the team to take out of this? Is it just try to trust people, tell them they're dumb and buy in, or you just have to hope your team leader knows what they're doing?
Yeah, I think if you're not leading a team, I think there's a book like Leading Without Leading, like Leading Without Being a Team Leader, but I haven't read it yet, so I don't know how to do it. But I would say one thing helpful for you is to recognize you can still build trust with your team members, right? Even though you're not a executive, you still have if you want your team to work better, try to build trust by, like talking to them, see where they're coming from, and like literally where they come from. Like, hey, where are you come from? Like, what's your background? What's your network? So just a small talk a little bit. Like, what's your favorite childhood? What you done? That way you can. It's a very quick way to build, as you mentioned earlier, like report and stuff like that. Then you can slowly build trust over time, right? That way you can, once you know that, you can say, then you can maybe more criticize or more openly, right? That way, yeah. So I think you can still build trust with your team. That way, your small team around you, like even in, I think I mentioned earlier, like executive, not engineering team, like research teams, right? Just the way you divide up tasks, right? If you want the research to go well, you need to have a debate, like voice your, just say whatever you really feel about this, right? Be trustful, because it's not really worth it to stay in a team that doesn't value that, I guess. It's like life is too short, I guess, and another way is to recognize when you are in a dysfunctional team. If nothing, you can do things to change it, to make it better. But if you recognize you are in a company that is like that, like maybe the executive team is very dysfunctional, and then your people around you are saying things that they don't really, just playing politics, not what they really, not open to each other, and then maybe it's a recognize that, then maybe you should move on to a better other place where you can find a team like that, a good team, basically. Yeah, I think it actually made me realize, like, made me think about the team I'm working right now in my company. Like, I actually really enjoy it because we actually, talk about stuff very openly. Right?
Well, of course you have to say that, right? You're working for them now.
Yeah, true. You're right.
I don't know if I can trust you, Shu.
Yeah, exactly. You don't have to. But anyway, so that's why I actually find it. I like the job I have right now because I really enjoy like working in the team. So.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really good point, is to like make a cognizant effort of just being like, I have an idea here that like I could just let go, but like make a point of expressing it.
Yeah.
And like it's better to, try to open up, throw things out there. Yeah. And if it turns out to be toxic to like that, then maybe you don't want to be there.
Yeah, it's a good way to test whether your team is good or not, right? It's your
And I would say, don't, like, if when your teammates, like, say something like, you know, and that, like if they're starting to be expressive, maybe don't frame it as them being dumb, but talk to them about why you disagree with the idea. So,
yeah. Also, in the future, if you're ever leading a team, you make sure you have the right people. If you have a people that is not really like good for the team, you know, you have to make a good decision, like fast decision to let and go very, very, very quickly because it's toxic. It's gonna ruin your team, right? If you
can't,
because if you're one person in there, you're gonna lose all your other team members too. So just be careful of that too. Yeah. Anyway, cool.
All right.
That was a good show.
Thank you. Yeah, I enjoyed that actually. I join you guys and I talk about like just have a different views on things, and then we actually can discuss my understanding a little bit better, right?
I enjoy getting the insight and knowledge you gain from reading a book in an hour instead of having to spend 5 hours reading it or something.
Honestly, like that diagram was good. I feel like, you know, like how many pages does the book show?
I'm not sure. It's pretty short. Also, the book actually it starts with a story. It's a fictional story about like see a new CEO coming, try to make the team better. So it's kind of like fictional business book, but still in a business context. And then I like those. It's easy to read personally for me. So
it's like historical fiction, but like business fiction.
Yeah, kind of thing. Yeah. I think it's probably maybe 200 pages. It's very short.
Well, no, but that diagram I felt like was a really good summary of, you know, or I mean, obviously I didn't write it, but that did a good job summarizing it.
Sounds good. Yeah, but you guys definitely should read it in the future if you're ever like leading a team or something like that.
Refresh on it.
VP. Cool. So next week, 2 weeks, we talk about K-pop. Is that right, Mike?
That's right. Mike's talking about K-pop.
Yeah, we can talk about
focusing on the big questions in society here on the Junto Club. Remember, we're trying to improve ourselves, understand the world around us. K-pop.
Wow. I mean, entertainment is a big driver in society. So
It is true. Is it making us degenerate, or is it, you know, the next economic thing to invest in? There's a lot of angles you can take on this.
Well, we'll see where it goes, but
right.
I'm very hopeful Jake will be on because I need him. He is the expert on this. So
just plan asking like what is good. If not, then you know we can just like hold off the topic until he's good.
All right, yeah. No, I'll let him know about that today. Yeah, because I mentioned it to him a while ago, but I want to double confirm. But
I think 2 weeks is enough time for Matt to come out with a topic.
So, I guess.
A backup.
I'll push for, like, even if we had to record like on a Sunday, like if we had to record like at a slightly different time, I'll push for K-pop for it to be the next topic. But,
okay. Sounds good.
All right. So anything else before I end recording?
No, I think you can end recording.
All right. See everyone in 2 weeks.
Junto Club.